In this video, I will guide you through the languages of the Slavs, the largest Indo-European ethno-linguistic group in Europe today. And I will show you the quickest way to gain a good understanding of all the Slavic languages, which can be 11 to 19 depending on the language dialect classification, by focusing on learning less than half of them. Even just mastering only 3 Slavic languages, which I will explain later in the video, can help you understand the rest and even communicate fairly well with speakers from those other languages. Hi, my name is Tim Keeley, professor of cross-cultural management and author of the book A Life in 30 Languages. I love Slavic languages and cultures, and I have studied almost all of the Slavic languages during the past 40 years. From the age of 20 years old, I have worked and traveled extensively in all the countries where Slavic languages are spoken, including 10 of the republics of the former Soviet Union. I also studied Slavic languages in graduate school at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, Poland from 1979 to 1981. And for sure, this is a long video, but I'm extremely excited what you can learn about Slavic languages by watching this. I hope that my love for Slavic nations and the hard work that I put into making this video can be helpful for you and your language learning journey. Now, let's go. As I mentioned, Slavs constitute the largest ethno-linguistic group in Europe, 32.3%, followed by the Romance group at 31%, and the Germanic group, including the UK, at 27%. At the turn of the 21st century, the total number of native speakers of Slavic languages was estimated to be 315 million. A Slavic language is an official or dominant language in 16.13% of the Earth's landmass, covering a vast territory including large parts of southern, central, and eastern Europe, Central Asia, Siberia, and the Russian Far East. So, how many Slavic languages are there? That is a complex question since it requires distinguishing between languages and dialects. Linguists often use mutual intelligibility as the main criterion. However, politically, the situation is quite different. For example, Czech and Slovak are treated as separate languages, despite their high level of mutual intelligibility. In contrast, Cantonese is often labeled as a dialect in China, even though someone who only speaks the standard form of Chinese, Mandarin, will understand next to nothing of a conversation in Cantonese. So the answer is 11 to 19, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and I will explain this in more detail. The Slavic languages are conventionally divided into 3 subgroups: Eastern, Western, and Southern. So you can guess, what is the best strategy to learn less but understand more when it comes to Slavic languages? The answer is to learn one from each of these 3 groups. Let's take a look at each group and which 3 languages you should learn first. The East Slavic languages are currently spoken throughout Eastern Europe, Northern Asia, and the Caucasus. The group has a great number of speakers, far outnumbering the West Slavic and South Slavic groups. The present-day East Slavic languages are Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Rusyn. However, there is a debate about Rusyn being either a separate language or a dialect of Ukrainian. Thus, there are 3 or 4 East Slavic languages. All of them are written using a version of the Cyrillic script. First, let's take a closer look at Russian. With 117.72 million native speakers, Russian has the highest prevalence in Russia among the 26 official languages there. A total of about 154.9 million people worldwide speak Russian as their mother tongue, and is spoken as a second language by about 60 million people in addition to the native speakers. So that means over 200 million people speak Russian. It is by far the dominant Slavic language in terms of the number of speakers. In addition, Russian is the most spoken language in Europe. Now let's take a look at the second largest East Slavic language, Ukrainian. There's an estimated 41 million native speakers worldwide, of whom 37.5 million, or 91%, live in the Ukraine. It is important to note that Russian is widely spoken in Ukraine as well. According to a survey done in 2022, 81% of the population of Ukraine speaks Ukrainian in their personal life, and at the same time, 34% speak Russian, meaning that a significant portion of the Ukrainian residents, constituting 19% of the people, speak both languages regularly. This map shows which language dominates in the various areas of the country. You see that Russian is the strongest in the eastern regions. The prevalence of the Russian language in Ukraine is a result of more than 3 centuries of domination by Moscow. From Peter the Great onwards, the Russian state attempted to eradicate any hints of Ukrainian nationalism and independence. When I was in the Ukraine during the Soviet times in 1978, my friend Oksana, a native of Kiev, told me that one day when she was walking down the street talking to her father in Ukrainian, they were accosted by a complete stranger who growled in Russian, "Why are you teaching your child that useless language?" Only now, looking back at all that has transpired since that day in 1978, can I fully understand the importance of this linguistic cultural conflict. Eliminating linguistic identity is critical to squashing a sense of belonging to a national group. So, what are the closest languages to Ukrainian in terms of lexical similarity, vocabulary? According to these estimates, we see that even though Polish and Slovak are classified as West Slavic, they have greater lexical similarity with Ukrainian than Russian does. It is important to note that lexical similarity does not always equate mutual intelligibility. While Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian share many common words, their pronunciation, intonation, and certain syntactical structures can differ, impacting how well speakers of each language can understand each other. As mentioned, the debate about Rusin being either a separate language or a dialect of Ukrainian is related to the high lexical similarity between the two languages. There are about 70,000 native speakers of Rusin, and the majority of them live in neighboring countries, mainly Slovakia, Serbia, and Poland. As for the Belarusian language, about 6,984,000 Belarusians, 85.6%, declared the language to be their native language. Other sources, such as Ethnologue, place the figure at around 3.5 million active speakers in Belarus. The lexical vocabulary similarity between Russian and Belarusian is often considered to be the highest amongst the East Slavic languages. The percentage of lexical similarity can range from 70 to 80%, reflecting their shared history and linguistic roots. Here's what the 4 languages sound like.
Мало волнует, поэтому расскажем вам о новом природном явлении. Во всем мире на улицы крупнейших городов, временно затихшие из-за пандемии, выходят дикие животные. Ну, начнем с Сантьяго-де-Чилі, где прямо по улице прогуливается хищная пума.
А тим часом кандидати на депутатство надалі проводять агітаційні зустрічі з виборниками. Одні обіцяють добробит, інші ж кажуть, що саме головне.
Ну так і це мова йде про консультативну
домовленостей вже були якісь обмеження, що так, прописаний десь пункт,
дивіться,
що люди,
я розумію, але це, мені здається, це деякою мірою все одно другорядне. Якщо ми хочемо досягнути миру, то ми маємо пробувати.
Всім доброго здоров'ячка, звати Нями Гальницька. Ми з вами будемо никати на кіко карпато-русинський говор, подобний до українського. Ну, поздоровкайтеся зі мною, поклоніть-мися. Що в нас низька туйка буде діятися? Я вам буду розказувати за деякі предмети та й слова, а ви будете мусити вгадати, що то є.
I imagine it is clear to you that the language in this group we should choose to learn first is Russian. The main reasons are the number of Russian speakers and the vast territory that it covers. Now let's take a look at the West Slavic languages. The West Slavic languages include Polish, Czech, Slovak, Kashubian, Upper Sorbian, Lower Sorbian, and Silesian. The languages are spoken across a contiguous region encompassing the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, former East Germany, and the western regions of the Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. The West Slavic languages are all written using Latin-based scripts. There are over 50 million Polish speakers around the world. The United States alone is home to about 580,000 Polish speakers. In this map, you see the major and minor dialects, as well as the location of Kashubian and Silesian. Out of all the Slavic languages, I have studied Polish the most. As I mentioned, I studied in Poznan, Poland for 2 years, from 1979 to 1981. By the way, during my trekking trip in Nepal this year, I met many Poles along the way, and they often thought I was from Poland, and they were very surprised to hear that I'm a Japanese citizen. I still feel a strong connection with the language and people of Poland. According to the USA's Defense Language Institute ranking of difficulty, Polish is harder than any other Slavic language due to its grammar being uniquely irregular. In addition, Polish is infamous for its consonant clusters, typified by the name Grzegorz Brzęczykiewicz.
Naam en voornaam? Grzegorz Brzęczykiewicz. Brzęczykiewicz. Grzegorz. Brzęczykiewicz. Kas?
Naam en voornaam?
Grzegorz Brzęczykiewicz.
Geboren.
Chrząszcz Rzewoszyce, powiat Łękołody.
In Poland, Kashubian has been an officially recognized ethnic minority language since 2005. Some linguists claims it's a dialect of Polish or a remnant of Pomeranian language. It is spoken in the Pomerania region of northern Poland, the area known as Kashubia. Before World War II, Kashubian speakers were mainly surrounded by German speakers, with only a narrow border to the south with Polish speakers. Kashubian contains several features not found in other Polish dialects. For example, 9 distinct oral vowels versus 6 in standard Polish. Approximately 108,000 people use mainly Kashubian at home. Kashubian is closely related to Polish due to shared West Slavic roots. The lexical similarity is quite high, with some sources estimating it to be upwards of 80 to 90%. This high degree of similarity is one of the reasons why Kashubian is sometimes considered a dialect of Polish, though it has distinct phonological, syntactical, and lexical features that justify its status as a separate language. Opinions are also divided regarding whether Silesian is a distinct language or a dialect of Polish. The Silesian language or ethnolect is actually a group of several sub-dialects spoken today in mostly Upper Silesia. Historically, these dialects have been influenced by literary Polish, Czech, and German languages, as well as Slovakian and Slavic, a German dialect spoken in Lower Silesia before 1945. According to the last official census in Poland, about 460,000 people declared Silesian as their native language. Now, heading south from Poland, we find Czech and Slovak. Each language has its own standard form and is the official language of its respective country, Czech in the Czech Republic and Slovak in Slovakia. Nevertheless, it can be said that most varieties of Czech and Slovak are mutually intelligible, forming a dialect continuum rather than being two separate, distinct languages. Standardized forms of these two languages are, however, easily distinguishable and recognizable because of differences in vocabulary, orthography, pronunciation, phonology, suffixes, and prefixes. Slovak is the second language of this group that I learned. Actually, I had a long conversation in Slovaks in Thailand before I even studied the language. Of course, I could not answer using Slovak. I used a mixture of Polish and Croatian, as well as some Slovak I was learning on the spot. The first thing I noticed was the past tense is formed the same way in Croatian and other South Slavic languages. It involves combining a form of the auxiliary verb to be with the past participle of the main verb. For example, I read a book. Slovak, ja som čital knihu. Male speaker, female, ja som čitala. Croatian, ja sam čital knihu. Female, ja sam čitala knihu. Finally, we have Upper and Lower Sorbian, two Slavic languages spoken in parts of Eastern Germany by about 550,000 people. Upper Sorbian is spoken around Bautzen and Lower Sorbian north of Cottbus. Interestingly, the difference between the two is very much based on religious differences between Protestants and Catholics who lived in fairly closed communities in separate villages. Upper Sorbian shows more similarities to Czech, while Lower Sorbian shows more similarities to Polish. Now let's listen to some samples of these languages. First we have Polish, Czech and Slovak.
Zobaczymy, jak to będzie. Chociaż już na pierwszej konferencji prasowej pani Borys Szopa miała dobre wieści, że bezrobocie w Polsce jest rekordowo niskie. No zobaczymy, jak to będzie. Pani minister Rafalska nie miała się dostać do Parlamentu Europejskiego. Ona miała zostać, zrobić dobry wynik. I dla niej samej to było zaskoczenie, bo jedna z wiadomości telewizyjnych pokazywało jej wypowiedź, kiedy do pana Brudzińskiego mówiła:
V souvislosti s nákazou koronavirem řeší české úřady naprosto přelomový případ. V zemi se objevil první člověk, u kterého není jasné, kde a kdy se nakazil. Nemocným je taxikář, který v minulých 3 dnech podle hygieniků rozvezl po Praze nejméně 90 lidí. Úřady se snaží vystopovat všechny jeho zákazníky.
10 rokmi vyšiel v krátkých nohaviciach na Mount Everest. Bez topánok bežal maratón za severným polárnym kruhom a bez vody odbehol ďalší maratón v namíbijskej púšti.
Aby toho nebolo málo, neuveriteľných 112 minút vydržal v nádobe plnej ľadu.
Holandský motivátor a kaskadér Wim Hof je na Slovensku.
And in this video we have Silesian followed by Kashubian.
To je takie urządzenie, na odmiana do szparbiksy tego nie poradzimy trzymać doma. To je za srogie, co by my to mieli kaś w chałupie, kaś we izbie. To je ino stoć na placu. To je ino stoć na placu i to je takie urządzenie, które je pomocne, kiedy sprzątamy.
Ja myślę, że też rozumiem, łecim te gydu, nie miał czasu, żeby rzeknąć, ale te gydu łecim, że to jest coś, co je zawiódzi, żeby trzymać w hecie i to stoi byten i że to ledzuma je przedotny do tego, żeby nagląc coś doma.
And finally, Upper and Lower Sorbian.
Přeč si. Ja přeju si. Přeju ci šo dobre k narodninam. Přeju ci zdrowotu a úspěch. Gratulować. Ja gratuluju.
Życyš se. Życem si šo dobre k Narodnemu dniu. Życem si zdrowość a úspěch. Gratulirować. Gratulirujom si k Narodnemu dniu.
Thus, there are 5 to 7 West Slavic languages depending on the results of the language dialect debates. Now, for the first language that you should learn from this group is Polish for sure. Why? Polish ranks second in terms of native speakers, and it assists the most in understanding the other West Slavic languages as well. Obviously, Slovak helps more with Czech than Polish does. But when considering the West Slavic group as a whole, plus Ukrainian and Belarusian, Polish provides the most help overall. With a combined knowledge of Polish and Russian, it is possible to understand a great deal of Ukrainian and Belarusian. That brings us to the third group, the South Slavic languages. Slovene was the first Slavic language that I studied. It all began when I met a fellow backpacker from Slovenia while in Bolivia in 1976, and we traveled together. However, later in 1977, I switched to Serbo-Croatian when I rode a bicycle along the coast of the former Yugoslavia for 3 months. The issue of language versus dialect has been a persistent issue related to nationalism in the former Yugoslavia and Bulgaria. The concept of Serbo-Croatian as one language was an essential aspect of promoting unity in the former Yugoslavia. However, the process of linguistic standardization of Serbo-Croatian was originally initiated in the mid-19th century Vienna Literary Agreement by Croatian and Serbian writers and philologists decades before Yugoslav state was established. Most people knowledgeable about the linguistic situation in the territory defined by the former Yugoslavia acknowledge the existence of 3 languages: Slovenian, BCMS, and Macedonian. BCMS is a pluricentric language with 4 mutually intelligible standard varieties: Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, and Serbian. A pluricentric or polycentric language is a language with several interacting codified standard forms. Nevertheless, some people, often with nationalistic intent, insist that BCMS represents at least 2, if not 4 separate languages. In recent years, separate textbooks have been available for Serbian and Croatian, as well as grammar books entitled Bosnian, Croatian, and Serbian. You probably won't find individual textbooks for Bosnian, but I found a phrase book for Montenegrin. I have used BCMS textbooks to increase my understanding of the 4 varieties of the language. During a recent trip to Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro, I challenged myself to adjust my speech to what I heard in conversations. But it is more complicated than it appears from my explanation so far. There are many dialects. For example, in Croatian, there is Slovakian, Čakavian, and Kajkavian dialects. The names indicate the 3 different words used for the word what in each dialect: Što, Ča, Kaj. Slovakian is the prestige dialect of the pluricentric Serbo-Croatian language and the basis of Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin. A further complicating factor is that Macedonian is still widely regarded as a dialect by Bulgarian scholars, historians, and politicians. They deny the existence of a separate Macedonian language and declare it a written regional form of Bulgarian. If they are one language, then modern Bulgarian is based on the Eastern dialect. At the same time, modern Macedonian is based on the Western dialect spoken around the city of Debar in today's North Macedonia. The distinguishing characteristics of Macedonian Bulgarian are that they don't have grammatical cases and do have definite articles. On the other hand, all the other Slavic languages have 7 grammatical cases, or 6 in the case of Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian, which lack the vocative case. I will have to leave a detailed discussion of grammatical cases for another video, since it's very involved and not easy to grasp unless you know another language with grammatical cases, such as Latin or German, but German only has 4 cases. Thus, the South Slavic languages can be said to consist of 3 to 7 languages.
Tega ni zdaj tako enostavno pride do te robe, ne? Ja, vsekakor. Je tudi velik logističen zalogaj, ne? Vemo, kako je tudi sam DHL na naše novinarsko vprašanje pred časom dejal, da se sicer trudijo, da je vsaka dobava neke opreme iz neke druge države
Rješavanje stambenog pitanja jedan je od imperativa svake mlade obitelji, a kako bi zaustavili iseljavanje i potaknuli mlade da ostanu, u Vukovarsko-srijemskoj županiji pokrenuli su projekt dodjele bespovratnih sredstava za kupnju kuće ili stana.
Je postalo opasno mjesto, ali kako to znamo? Tako što u medijima vidimo i gledamo događaje koji se dešavaju diljem svijeta. Kako takve informacije i slike sa mjesta događaja dođu do vas? Odgovor je jednostavan. Medijski radnici.
Vodiči. Izložba donosi priču o sudbini Ane Frank i možete pogledati u Domu omladine do 8. maja. A svi oni koji vole nakit u Etnografskom muzeju u Beogradu mogu pogledati izložbu prstenja pod nazivom Bez početka i kraja sa reprezentativnim primjercima nakita iz
Изливане на бетон на метри от морето и започнали нови строежи веднага след края на туристическия сезон. Това предизвика възмущение в социалните мрежи. Граждани публикуваха снимки и клипове с изграждането на поредните ваканционни постройки и то само...
Веќе 7 часа, вклучително и 2 паузи, во собранието трае расправата за законот за јавно обвинителство. По тензичниот почеток седницата доби извесен тек, но доминира довикувања одместо, процедурални забелешки, реплики и контраобвинувања.
So, what should be the first Slavic language from the South group that you should learn? It would be best to use a textbook for Serbo-Croatian, even though no one speaks exactly like what it teaches. Otherwise, you study Croatian or Serbian. So the most powerful combination of 3 Slavic languages is Russian, Polish, and Serbo-Croatian. For the 4th language, I would suggest Bulgarian, since that will help you understand Macedonian. And for the 5th, Slovene, because Serbo-Croatian is not enough to help you have a good understanding of the language. If you want to continue to your 6th Slavic language, I recommend learning Slovak, since it helps you with Czech and Lucene. In addition, it is more or less in the center of all Slavic languages. In summary, the number of Slavic languages still in use ranges from 11 to 19. So far, I have studied 10 of them. Listed chronologically, Slovene, Serbo-Croatian or BCMS, Russian, Polish, Slovak, Czech, Ukrainian, Bulgarian, Belarusian, and Macedonian. My most robust 4 are Polish, Russian, BCMS, and Slovak, mainly due to how much time I have spent speaking the languages. I have spent the least amount of time speaking and reading Macedonian. Though I have yet to study the remaining Slavic languages discussed here, I understand them quite well in their spoken and written forms. If you have listened to this point, then you must be very motivated to learn a Slavic language or add to ones you already know. All the best to you. Enjoy your journey through one of the world's leading language families and cultural clusters. See you in the next video.